marriage catechumen is about the start of a grand and wonderful adventure. And that's really what we need to propose to people, because the possibilities after that are just beautiful and limitless, because it is a lifetime of together as a husband and wife, as a marriage, as a family, of following Jesus Christ wherever he calls.
I'm wearing a new shirt. That's because it's a new day. But guess what? We have another great interview for you from the Marriage Catechumenate Summit in Houston, Texas. Today, we talked to Peter Jesserer Smith, a journalist and OSB News' first national news and features editor. In this episode, he sits down with Bridget to talk about journalism and sharing the good news in action. He also talks about the missionary vocation of marriage and what it looks like when a family is living effectively as missionary disciples. We hope you enjoy this bonus interview with Peter Jesserer Smith, and please keep an eye out for the documentary coming soon. Roll.
Well, I'm Peter Jesserer Smith. I'm the national news editor for OSB News. And prior to that, I was a staff reporter at the National Catholic Register. So it's exciting to be able to share the good news in action.
Yeah. And so, with all of that knowledge base, what do you make of this summit?
Well, I think this is a very important summit that's long been overdue, precisely because what the church has been offering right now for marriage preparation, while valuable for some people, is really not accomplishing, I think, what we've really hoped to see coming out of, marriage preparation. And even for a lot of us who went through it, even those with a real experience of faith have really felt this is not really quite serving us. A lot of marriage preparation feels like the church felt it had to do something. And it can feel like a lot of hoops. And there's certain parts that actually do feel very, very valuable, but you don't actually get to spend enough time exploring that or going through that. One of the things I think the marriage catechumenate has the power to do is to set men and women, having embraced the call of discipleship, they are, as a family, are called to live out a mission, the mission that Jesus has given them as his disciples. And it's these families that have the greatest missionary potential that our church has today. So much of our storytelling has focused on, I think, priests and religious. And therefore, we start to think, oh, they're the lead protagonists. They're the ones who are doing all the work, so to speak. But I think one of the things we need to do is we need to rediscover our story again and recognize that, no, they're part of it, but they're the ones who helped gather this community of disciples around Jesus Christ. But the ones who are in the front lines of missionary work were these families. These are people like us today. Think of the places that you go. If you're on a university, you're engaging with fellow students all the time. I mean, I know some guys who are electricians, and they formed a Bible study for the guys in their, in their electrical union. The parents who are bringing their kids to school events or having their family kid groups, or all those are points of contact that the lay people, the families, have with the world because their vocation puts them there all the time. And so that's what I think is the great power of this, which is to not just form families for the idea of let's make sure that they don't end up divorced, which is important, but to understand what is the end. What is the end goal of to be a married person? To have the joy of the gospel permeate your relationship, to be able to extend that and share that with others. Then all the obstacles and the problems that we see with marriage and family life, we recognize that those are just problems and obstacles to fulfilling this beautiful missionary vocation to which Jesus Christ has called them. And in the book I wrote with Ryan and Mary Rose Verret, the Road to Family Missionary Discipleship, we don't start with the problem. We start with, what does this really look like when it's flourishing? What do you see families of missionary disciples really look like when they're alive? Marriage catechumen is about the start of a grand and wonderful adventure. And that's really what we need to propose to people, because the possibilities after that are just beautiful and limitless, because it is a lifetime of together as a husband and wife, as a marriage, as a family, of following Jesus Christ wherever he calls.
Yeah, and you have great responsibility in your role to shape that narrative, right? And to tell that story rather than the story that often gets told, right? Whether you're looking at the numbers or statistics. How do you see, your involvement with this?
One of the great opportunities that I have is to be able to help other people understand the world by going and talking and learning from different people about, what do you see? I think 8 years ago, I was at the National Catholic Register, where I did a lot of this work for a very long time, reporting on marriage and family life initiatives and evangelization, discipleship. And I come across that there is this discussion of a marriage catechumenate. I'm like, well, this is interesting. I mean, I'd been reporting on this kind of marriage and family life stuff, and I'd recognized there's a need to address this. I wrote that story, and then about a month later, Ryan and Mary Rose Verret came across that story, reached out to me and said, we are actually doing this with Witness to Love. This concept, this idea that the Synod has just talked about. And I said, that's fantastic. I'd love to do a profile on your organization. The thing that really got me was talking to the priests who had done this, because I've talked with a number of priests, and marriage preparation is very difficult for them. And it's difficult because they don't feel like they're succeeding. It's not simply that, it's a feeling of spiritual responsibility that I have gone through this entire process, and I feel like this couple will just crash and burn and will be gone. And now I am a part of that. The priests I was talking to who were going through this said, I'm now excited about marriage formation again. I'm seeing people who are actually now in church after the wedding. There's something that's attractive about this approach. The insight that Ryan and Mary Rose had with their particular model was recognizing that friendship starts with a shared good. It's that, find something in their marriage that you really admire and you want for yourself. That becomes the shared good. That becomes something upon which, that kernel on which friendship is built. Hearing a lived experience of marriage, the highs and the lows, and it makes it attractive. It helps them understand what this vocation is about, so that they can say a full, yes, this is what we want. Or even sometimes discern, this is the marriage that we want, and it's not with each other. And even though that can be a painful experience, at the same time, that's a real discernment experience, because it's far better to be married to the person that Jesus Christ has called you to be with than to try to force through a way of life that is actually not something that Jesus has called you to, and is something that is not going to be good for you. But it's seeing that transformation that's possible, that is happening.
And just to sum it up, if you were going to write a story about this experience, what's happening in there, the differing personalities, different parts of the country, everybody coming together, how would you sort of sum up what is going on, and maybe the hope or the fruit that is supposed to come to the church afterward?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it dovetails with what Pope Francis has been calling for a synodal church. And in a sense of a church where people from their very different perspectives coming together in a common effort to understand what is the end goal that we want, recognizing that it's not one size fits all, recognizing that there are people who have different different starting points. We all have different starting points. And actually, this is facilitating a conversation. We're also faced with, in many ways, kind of the brokenness that we have in the church in terms of relating and communicating and being in the same room together. It's the vital importance of having everyone involved in this process in the same room, talking to each other and sharing and learning. This is just the beginning. And I'm excited to see what is coming down the road.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this. This has been a delight to pick your brain a little bit.
Oh, thank you so much.
You.
Absolutely.